Take two. All right. All-Star break. I've got the leading scorers by points, save percentage, defenseman leading scorers, and rookies. Now, save percentage is a number that people don't like to be used to measure goaltenders, and there's people who have advanced stats to measure goaltenders, and people might look at wins and say, oh, look who has the most wins. And then, of course, somebody's going to go, well, yeah, look at the defense they got, though. Look at the defense this guy plays behind, and he's got this save percentage. And we says, yeah, well, that save percentage doesn't matter because he doesn't get us the same quality of shots. And we go on arguing forever. That's kind of how goaltending works in the NHL. Point scorers are it's pretty straightforward. I don't know why I went by TSN's number by number. Should have gone by NHL's. I went by the NHL's numbers with the rookies, and it works better. I don't know. TSN seems to have, well, if you've played less games, you got the same amount of points, then you're ahead. But in some cases, they don't. So I'm not sure exactly how this works. And is it alphabetical or? Yeah, I guess it's alphabetical by points. I guess that's how they do it. No, because Tavares, Giroux, and it's not by goals because McDavid over Bailey. So all right. But let's take a look at it. So number one point scorer right now is Kucherov with 63 points in 49 games. And the one thing I'm starting to wonder is, are we looking at a season where we may not have a 100-point scorer? Last season, of course, McDavid went on a run at the end of the year to just get there. And it is something that's happened recently in the last few years. And it is something that is going to happen with more regularity due to the fact that scoring is down. And while it's not as far down this year as it's been in past years, when you still look at it, we're in a down period for goal scoring. So it makes it more impressive when certain players are scoring goals the way they are. One guy who's not on this chart is Michael Grabner, who's got a ton of goals. Not very many assists, so he doesn't get on the chart. Kucherov, 63 points, leads the way. McKinnon's next with 60. So McKinnon's got within 3 points. Now we have to wonder, have McKinnon and the Avs, have they peaked? Are we looking at a situation where they've peaked? Because if they have, that throws things out, kind of. Maybe he starts falling down the chart. I don't know. But he's ahead right now. He's ahead of Stamkos, who has 58 points in 49 games. Kessel with 58 points in 51. Tavares, the potential unrestricted free agent, 57 points in 50 games. I don't think he's going anywhere. Giroux, 57 points in 49 games, which every Flyers fan will tell you about. They'll just, hi, have you seen Giroux lately? And I understand it. It's fun because when Giroux's on his game, he is one of the best agitators in the league, too. So when he's scoring, he's agitating, and when he's not scoring, he seems to be less of an agitator. Just notice he's less visible when he's not playing particularly well. And in both ways, not just scoring, but in the agitation too. Voracek has got 56 points in 49 games. So does Gaudreau. 56 points in 49 games for Gaudreau. Same number of games as Voracek. I don't know why I did that qualifier. Gaudreau is a guy that Flames fans want to see get Hart Trophy consideration, and he might, especially with the Flames going on a nice run over the last 15 games. But really, I think Monahan's going to get some consideration in that direction as well. Monahan's playing very well. Ferland's been a revelation for the Flames this year too. Crosby, 55 points in 51 games. It is not a coincidence that as Pittsburgh gets better, so do Crosby's statistics. Crosby, when he plays well, Pittsburgh wins, which is why the Hart Trophy would likely go to Crosby. This is why Crosby's playing in the All-Star game. And it doesn't look as egregious now as it did when the teams were announced. Crosby currently sits 3 points behind Kessel. So Kessel's going to be upset, rightfully so. But you know what? It's not that bad because Crosby's played really well since it was announced. Bailey, 54 points in 46 games. McDavid also has 54 points, but in 49. And Wheeler with 54 points in 50 games. Of course, the question becomes, is McDavid going to go on a big run for the last 30-some games in the second half? My answer to that would be probably, but I do think that McDavid's production is more tied to his line mates. When he was with Draisaitl, and those two had that great symmetry and synergy last year, just fantastic results took place. And this is kind of where when people talk about, well, McDavid's already better than Crosby, part of me says, well, no, because Crosby has always had sort of pedestrian wingers, and he's still put up great numbers, whereas McDavid hasn't shown that he can do that yet. He's young. He's learning. But that's why, for me, Crosby is still ahead of McDavid. And Wheeler is a guy who doesn't get talked about enough outside of Winnipeg. Very solid point producer, and part of the reason why, with Scheifele out, they haven't fallen back. In fact, they're first in their division. So, it's been great, and when Scheifele gets back, it should get even better. Malkin and Ovechkin are the two Russians. Next up, Ovechkin with 53 points, Malkin with 52. Ovechkin leading the way in the league with 30 goals. He has a shot at 50. 50 is becoming... because then he has to get 20 goals over 33 games. He can do that. That's definitely within his range. But it's not like he's going to ever score 60 again. I wait for that. When you see him score 7 goals in his first 2 games this year, Party has got to be saying, man, is he going to hit 60 this year? Are we going to? And I remember we were talking about, can he hit 50 and 50? Unless he scores 20 in his next game? No, he can't. So he's slowed down from where he was at the start of the year, but anybody would. And Malkin's 23 goals, 52 points in 47 games. For points per game, he's really pretty good. But anytime I talk up Malkin, I get told that I'm overrating him, so I'm just going to leave that where it is. Barzal next, 51 points in 50 games. And, of course, right now he's the front runner for a trophy we'll talk about later. Kopitar, 51 points in 49 games. Shen with 50 and 51. Shen's been cooler in terms of his scoring with Schwartz out. Now that Jaden Schwartz is back, I would expect his scoring to go back up. Brad Marchand, 50 points in 38 games. For points per game, Marchand is up there with the league leaders. But now he's suspended, and he's had injuries this year too. It's just been tremendous fun when he's not in the lineup. Patrick Kane, 49 points in 49 games. 20 of those points are goals. Kane is a point per game guy. This is who he is. He's not going to score 100 again. This is, that's his wheelhouse, is that point a game. Sean Couturier, the surprise of the year, 26 goals, 49 points, and he is in the top 20 in the NHL in scoring. Top 20, Sean Couturier. Nobody would have believed you at the start of the year if you'd predicted that. Now, for save percentage, these are the goalies who qualify. So qualifying goaltenders means a guy who's played a certain number of games or less just doesn't qualify for the chart. So I go with qualified in this case because we're trying to get a feel for who's having the best season, and unqualified goalies haven't played enough games, and therefore it's not a large enough sample size. Carter Hutton leads the way in save percentage with 943. Next up is Marc-Andre Fleury with a 942. Then Vasilevsky with a 931. So Hutton and Fleury are playing the best, but they're not playing as many games as Vasilevsky. For that reason, I believe Vasilevsky's still the front runner for the Vezina Trophy. Crawford's got a 929. Luongo's got a 928. They're both hurt. Pekka Rinne, 927. Rinne should maybe get a nomination for Vezina. It depends on whether or not Fleury plays a lot of games down the stretch. If Fleury plays a ton of games down the stretch, and if he keeps up this save percentage, he'll get nominated, and he might squeak in there and get one. Mike Smith with a 926 in Calgary. Anton Hudobin, 924 for Boston. Not too shabby. Hellebuck also with a 924 for Winnipeg. And Hellebuck has responded to the acquisition of Steve Mason by being the best goaltender in Winnipeg. And this is really what Winnipeg needed. They signed Steve Mason, and that spurred on Connor Hellebuck, so it makes Cheveldayoff look like a genius. Even though I'm not sure this is what he intended, but he's probably like, yeah, that's what I meant to do. Yeah, no, I signed Mason for a bunch of money to make Hellebuck better. That's what I did. Lundqvist is a 922. Rask has a 922. Rask was down in like a 905 or 906 position. And anytime I talked about Rask, I'd hear, well, Boston's defense isn't that good. I don't hear that now. And I don't talk about Rask not playing well because he's playing the best hockey he has in about 3 or 4 years. Jonathan Quick with a 921. I think that'll go back up. I think the Kings are just this Team that's been on peaks and valleys, and I think they're in the valley and they're going to come out of it. I say that despite some questionable losses, like the 6-2 loss to the Canucks, for instance, which didn't help his save percentage any. Freddie Anderson, 920. Any Leafs fan will tell you that he should win the Vezina. I'm just kidding. Not every Leafs fan, but there are a lot of Leafs fans who feel that he should at least be top 3. Despite the fact that his save percentage is lower than others, they'll point out that he doesn't have the same defense in front of him. I tend to agree, but when people do the award voting at the end of the year, it's usually based on who's got the best numbers, and it's not necessarily who the actual best goalie is. Not getting into that argument again. Bobrovsky's also got a 920 save percentage, as did John Gibson. John Gibson in Anaheim has been very solid, and it's not really talked about a whole lot, but he's been solid. And Bobrovsky, if his percentage starts going up, so do the odds of Columbus getting home ice in the first round. Jari's got a 919 in Pittsburgh. He's been very good in relief of Matt Murray. Antti Ranta's had a very good save percentage for a very bad team in Arizona. And at the deadline, I really think he's going to attract a lot of interest. I really do. I think he's going to attract a lot of interest. Because I think Arizona's going to be open for business, and I think Ranta may very well... I think one of two things. Either Ranta gets moved at the deadline, or he signs an extension in Arizona before the deadline. I think one of those two things is going to happen. Bernier. When Varlamov got hurt, again, we're stuck with, okay, well, Varlamov's out, what's going to happen? And then the backup comes in and plays better than Varlamov was. That happened last year with Calvin Pickard, too. Pickard that's staple to the American Hockey League. It makes me wonder how long Varlamov is going to be in Colorado, because they clearly don't really need Varlamov to make the playoffs. They're getting pretty solid goaltending from Bernier, and it's good enough to make them a playoff team right now. So at what point do you have the conversation about moving out Varlamov, and what can you get in return? Maybe time to start having that conversation. Stalock in Minnesota has been solid. Dubnyk has been less so. And Dubnyk, I think, played fantastic for a few years in Minnesota, and now it's just gravity takes over. And Bishop. Bishop, you're going to get diverging opinions on Bishop. I think he's an average goaltender to a little bit above average. I think Dallas could do worse, but they're still spending a lot of money on goaltending, and they don't have a goalie in the top 10. And they don't have a top 10 goaltender. Ben Bishop, to me, is not a top 10 goaltender in the NHL right now. Defenseman. Klingberg leading the way for Dallas is a major bone of contention for Dallas fans who want to see him in the Norris Trophy conversation. 50 games, 6 goals, 42 assists, 48 points. I agree the points are impressive. He's playing very, very well. Burns, with 41 points in 48 games, is coming on strong. Brent Burns has been playing really, really well for about a month and a half. He's back to being himself. And when Brent Burns is doing what he's doing now, it's very hard to vote against him. Carlson in Washington, 38 points in 49 games. Is he getting into the conversation? Subban, 37 points in 47 games, 12 of his points are goals. Is he also in the conversation? Pietrangelo, 35 points in 47 games. I don't hear as much about him as I did in October and early November, but he's still having a very good season. Doughty with 35 points in 49 games. Hedman with 33 points in 44 games. Of course, he's out for a while. Ghost in Philly, 33 points in 45 games. Ryan Suter, 32 points in 49 games. Seth Jones, also with 32 points in 49 games. He's going to the All-Star game. Erik Karlsson, 31 points in 42 games. Karlsson's been having a season that seems to be directly related to his ongoing issues with his health. Morgan Rielly in Toronto, 31 points in 47 games. Every now and then I'll have a Leafs fan ask, do you think Rielly's a Norris Trophy candidate? Not at this point. The potential's there, but at this point I don't see him out of this list. I just don't see him ahead of those guys. Nick Leddy has cooled off a lot from a hot start, 29 points in 50 games. Jake Gardner, 29 points in 51 games. So you got 2 Leafs in the top 20 in scoring. That's pretty good. So even though their defense is not considered to be fantastic, at least they're scoring on the blue line. So that's important. Torrey Krug, 28 points in 43 games. Of course, if not for injury, he'd be higher on this list. Will Butcher, 28 points in 48 games. I think he started off with 17 points in 17 games or something ridiculous. Will Butcher's points at the start of the year were just ridiculous. So he's cooled off a lot from that, but he's still having a fantastic rookie year. Jake Muzzin, 28 points in 46 games. He's that guy who's not Doughty in LA. That guy who's a pretty good defenseman, and you're trying to remember his name. It's Jake Muzzin. Roman Josi with 28 points in 44 games. Doesn't get the love he should because he's 18th on the scoring list, but Yosi's a fantastic defenseman as well. Chris Letang, 28 points in 48 games. I know he's in the All-Star game. I know people are upset about it. Sergachev, 27 points in 47 games for Tampa and being a healthy scratch. If you're a Tampa fan, don't worry about it because Ghost was a healthy scratch last year, and look where he is now. It is not unusual for young defensemen to be healthy scratches, especially in their rookie or sophomore years, as they're still learning the defensive aspects of the game. It's almost always the defensive part of the game that is the issue and not the offense. Rookies. So I'm going to do a quick take on rookies. Barzal leads the way with 51 points in 50 games. Besser's next with 43 points in 46. Then there's another gap between him and Keller. Keller's got 36 points in 50 games. Yanni Gourde with 33 and 49. Danton Heinen with 33 and 43. He's been a revelation for Boston. I had no idea he had this kind of potential. No clue. None. Zero. I might have expected this from Jake DeBrusk, but not from Heinen. DeBrincat, 32 points in 49 games. 17 of his points are goals. DeBrincat's he's a sniper. Kerfoot with 32 points in 45 games. Played a major role in that 10-game winning streak. Jesper Bratt with 30 points in 47 games. Again, much like Butcher, his point totals are not where they were the first 20 games of the year, but he has still had a solid rookie season. Kyle Connor in Winnipeg is getting better, so I expect him to move up this list. 29 points in 44 games. Nico Hischier with 29 points in 48 games, number 1 draft pick, and he's kind of an afterthought on this board, but watch for him next year. I think Hischier's just getting his feet wet. He's just learning his way around the league, and watch for him next year. I think he's going to be deadly. Let me know which of these names and numbers surprises you the most, both in the good and in the bad, and who surprises you for not being on the list. There are some names that are not on the list that are kind of surprising not being up here, and who do you think isn't up here that's going to just charge into this list in the last 35 games of the year? Hit like and subscribe, and if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video on the internet, and hey, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.